How are you making me so wet, human? Zoe gasps, her amphibious skin glistening with an unexpected bioluminescent sheen. Jeffrey Rogers, elbow deep in the malfunctioning atmospheric moisturizer, freezes. He turns to face the Pandronian scientist, her alien features contorted in what he can only assume is distress. Aboard the interstellar research vessel, Aquarius, chaos erupts. The botanical lab, usually a serene haven of Earth flora, transforms into a tempest. Artificial rain pelts down, drenching everything in sight. Jeffrey, a human hydroponics engineer, fumbles with the controls, desperate to shut off the experimental device he accidentally activated. Zoe stumbles forward, her highly sensitive Pandronian skin reacting intensely to the sudden moisture. She trembles, overwhelmed by the physical response coursing through her body. Jeffrey's eyes widen as he notices the faint glow emanating from her skin, a sight both fascinating and alarming. Alarms blare throughout the ship. Captain Sarah Chen's voice crackles over the intercom. Emergency evacuation of the botanical section. All hands, contain the spreading moisture. The urgency in her tone leaves no room for questions. Jeffrey's mind races. The moisturizer, now linked to the ship's main power grid, threatens to overload. He needs to reach the control room, fast. But as water begins to seep under the lab's sealed doors, he realizes the only safe path is through a maintenance shaft, one too narrow for standard protective gear. Zoe, fighting to maintain her composure, locks eyes with Jeffrey. I can guide you, she offers, her voice quivering. My amphibious nature. I can navigate the flooded areas. As they make their way through the ship's corridors, Zoe's physical reaction intensifies. She struggles to hide her mounting distress from Jeffrey, her skin pulsing with an ever-brighter glow. Around them, other Pandronian crew members exhibit similar responses, causing confusion and concern among the human crew. The ship's AI, detecting the spreading moisture, misinterprets it as a hull breach. Emergency protocols initiate, threatening to jettison the affected sections into space. Time is running out. Jeffrey and Zoe race against the clock, their journey a harrowing obstacle course of flooded compartments and malfunctioning systems. Zoe's labored breathing and the constant ripple of her bioluminescent skin serve as a stark reminder of the bizarre situation they found themselves in. Unknown to the crew of the Aquarius, a cloaked Pandronian military vessel observes the unfolding drama with keen interest. The commander's eyes narrow as he watches the humans inadvertently stimulate Pandronian physiology to an unprecedented degree. In his mind, the potential for a biological weapon begins to take shape. As Jeffrey and Zoe near the control room, the ship lurches ominously. The moisturizer's effects have spread further than anyone anticipated. They exchange a look of determination, knowing that the fate of the Aquarius and its crew now rests in their hands. With Zoe's alien biology pushed to its limits and Jeffrey's human ingenuity tested like never before, they prepare to face whatever challenges lie ahead in their quest to save the ship and unravel the mystery of Zoe's intense reaction. As Jeffrey and Zoe stepped into the maintenance shaft, the ship lurched violently. The narrow passage, already slick with moisture, suddenly became a treacherous tunnel as the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Jeffrey found himself floating upward, his head nearly grazing the ceiling. What's happening? He gasped, grabbing onto a nearby pipe to steady himself. Zoe's bioluminescent skin pulsed brightly in the dim light. The moisturizer must be affecting the ship's systems more than we thought, she said, her voice strained. We need to move quickly. They pushed forward, alternating between weightlessness and crushing gravity. Jeffrey's mind raced, analyzing their surroundings. His eyes landed on a pile of discarded equipment near an access panel. Wait, he said, reaching for a damaged air filtration unit and a length of cable. I have an idea. With deft movements, Jeffrey fashioned a makeshift flotation device, using the buoyant materials from the filtration unit and securing them with the cable. This should help us navigate these gravity pockets, he explained, handing it to Zoe. As they continued their perilous journey, alarms blared throughout the ship. In the medical bay, Dr. Marcus Stevens frowned at his console, his eyes widening as he processed the data before him. This can't be right, he muttered, rechecking the bio readings of the affected Pandronian crew members. The vitals displayed on his screen indicated a state of intense physical arousal, far beyond normal parameters. Dr. Stevens keyed the intercom. "Captain Chen, we have a situation. The moisturizer isn't just affecting the ship's systems. It's having a profound physiological impact on our Pandronian crew." In the command center, Captain Sarah Chen's face hardened as she absorbed this new information. "Understood, Doctor. Begin work on a treatment immediately. We need to stabilize their condition before it becomes critical." She turned to her communications officer. "Initiate a ship-wide lockdown. We can't risk further spread of the moisture or its effects. And send out an encrypted distress signal to the nearest human outpost. We're going to need all the help we can get." Unbeknownst to the crew of the Aquarius, their distress call was intercepted by the cloaked Pandronian military vessel hovering nearby. Admiral Zarlith leaned forward in his command chair, his alien features twisted in a mixture of curiosity and anticipation. "Fascinating," he murmured. "It seems our human friends have stumbled upon something quite extraordinary. Continue monitoring their communications and prepare for possible intervention." Back in the maintenance shaft, Jeffrey and Zoe pushed on, their progress hampered by the unpredictable gravity. They emerged into a corridor where a group of human crew members stumbled about, clearly disoriented. "What's wrong with them?" Zoe asked, her skin pulsing with concern. Jeffrey noticed a fine mist in the air, carrying an earthy scent he recognized from the botanical lab. "The moisturizer must have evolved," he realized. "It's spreading through the air filtration system, and it's carrying pollen from the earth plants. We need to get these people to safety." Using his knowledge of the ship's layout, Jeffrey guided the affected crew members to a secure area, demonstrating a level of leadership that caught Zoe off guard. She found herself admiring his quick thinking and compassion, even as her own body continued to react intensely to the moisture-laden environment. As they resumed their journey to the control room, the ship shuddered ominously. In the engineering section, Chief Engineer Li Wei cursed under his breath as he frantically worked to reroute power. "The moisturizer's affecting the power grid," he reported to Captain Chen. "We're facing a cascade failure in the propulsion systems. I'm attempting to divert power from non-essential systems, but it's risky. If this doesn't work, we could be dead in the water." After what seemed like an eternity of navigating treacherous passageways and variable gravity, Jeffrey and Zoe finally reached the control room. They found it partially submerged, emergency lights casting an eerie glow over the water's surface. Jeffrey waded to the main console, his mind racing as he assessed the situation. "We can't just shut it down," he said, fingers flying over the controls. "We need a full system reset, and we have to vent the affected areas simultaneously." Zoe moved to join him, but hesitated as she realized the implications. "A full vent could be dangerous for me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jeffrey turned to her, conflict evident in his eyes. "Zoe, I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking," she interrupted, stepping closer. "I'm staying. We do this together." The air between them seemed to crackle with tension, their faces mere inches apart. For a moment, the chaos around them faded away, replaced by an intense awareness of each other. The spell was broken by Captain Chen's voice crackling over the comm system. "Jeffrey, Zoe, we're picking up strange energy readings. There's an unidentified vessel approaching fast. Whatever you're going to do it now." Jeffrey and Zoe exchanged a look, the weight of their decision heavy between them. With the ship falling apart around them, an unknown threat looming, and Zoe's safety at risk, they faced an impossible choice. As Jeffrey's hand hovered over the reset sequence, time seemed to stand still, the fate of the Aquarius hanging in the balance. Jeffrey's hand hovered over the reset sequence for a split second before he made his decision. "We can't risk it," he said, pulling away from the console. "A full system reset could trap people in areas without life support. We need another way." Zoe nodded, her luminescent skin pulsing with renewed intensity. "What do you suggest?" Before Jeffrey could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life. Captain Chen's voice filled the control room, tense and urgent. "Unidentified vessel decloaking off our starboard bow. They're hailing us." Jeffrey and Zoe exchanged alarmed glances. On the main view screen, a Pandronian face materialized. Severe, alien, and unmistakably military. "This is Admiral Zarlith of the Pandronian Defense Force," the figure announced, his voice a low, guttural rumble. "We demand to know the nature of the experiment being conducted aboard your vessel." Captain Chen's voice remained steady as she responded, "Admiral, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the research vessel Aquarius. We're experiencing a malfunction with an experimental atmospheric moisturizer. It's affecting our systems and crew. We're working to contain the situation." As the captain engaged in diplomatic maneuvering, Jeffrey's mind raced. He turned to Zoe, whose condition was visibly deteriorating. "We need to use the emergency backup systems," he explained rapidly. "If we create a controlled power surge, we might be able to overload and shut down the moisturizer without compromising life support." Zoe nodded, her breathing labored. "Do it," she gasped. Jeffrey's fingers flew over the console, rerouting power and preparing for the surge. The ship groaned around them, systems flickering as he pushed them to their limits. In the medical bay, Dr. Marcus Stevens stared at his screen in disbelief. "This can't be right," he muttered, double-checking his findings. The data showed an unprecedented interaction between the Earth pollen and Pandronian physiology. He keyed the intercom. "Captain, I've made a breakthrough. The moisturizer isn't just affecting the Pandronians physically. It's creating some kind of empathic link between our species." In engineering, Chief Engineer Li Wei fought against the failing systems. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits as the moisturizer drew more and more power. "Everyone out!" he shouted to his team. "We're losing atmosphere in here." As the engineering crew evacuated, Li Wei made a last-ditch effort to stabilize the power grid. His fingers danced across the controls, sweat beading on his forehead as he worked against time. Back in the control room, Jeffrey initiated the power surge. Electricity arced across the consoles, and the ship lurched violently. Zoe stumbled, overcome by the intense sensations coursing through her body. Jeffrey caught her as she fell, and in that moment of contact, he was hit by a wave of foreign emotions and sensations. The surge worked, the moisturizer began to power down. But as it did, it released a final burst of super-concentrated mist. The cloud engulfed Jeffrey and Zoe, and she went limp in his arms, overwhelmed by sensory input. Jeffrey gasped, suddenly feeling everything Zoe was experiencing. The moisture on his skin felt electric, every touch magnified 100-fold. He struggled to focus through the onslaught of sensations. A loud bang echoed through the ship. Captain Chen's voice came over the intercom, strained and urgent. "Security teams to all key areas. We have boarders." Commander Vexera led the Pandronian boarding party through the corridors of the Aquarius, their alien forms moving with military precision. They encountered little resistance. Most of the crew were either incapacitated or busy with containment efforts. As they approached the control room, they found their path blocked by Captain Chen and a hastily assembled security team. The two groups faced off in the narrow corridor, tension thick in the air. "Stand down," Captain Chen ordered, her voice firm despite the chaos around them. Commander Vexara's eyes narrowed. "We're here to secure the moisturizer technology. Stand aside, or we will use force." In the control room, Jeffrey struggled to his feet, still supporting the semi-conscious Zoe. The effects of the moisturizer lingered in the air, creating a haze of heightened sensations and emotions. He could feel Zoe's discomfort, her confusion, and beneath it all, a growing sense of connection between them. The ship's systems were stabilizing, but the danger was just the beginning. With the Pandronian boarding party closing in and the full effects of the moisturizer still unknown, Jeffrey knew the next few moments would be crucial. He looked down at Zoe, then at the approaching confrontation visible on the security feeds. The fate of both ships hung in the balance. As Jeffrey prepared to face the boarding party, he realized that the key to resolving this crisis might lie in the very thing that had caused it, the unexpected connection between humans and Pandronians. Pandronians. As the realization dawned on him, Jeffrey's mind raced with possibilities. The lingering effects of the super-concentrated mist had created an unexpected bridge between their species, one that could potentially diffuse the tense situation unfolding outside the control room. "Zoe," he said softly, supporting her as she regained her composure. "I think I understand now. The moisturizer, it's not just affecting us physically, It's creating some kind of empathic link. Zoe's luminescent skin pulsed weakly as she focused on Jeffrey's words. I can feel it too, she whispered, her alien features contorting in a mix of confusion and wonder. It's like I can sense your thoughts, your emotions. Their moment of connection was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. On the security feed, Jeffrey saw Captain Chen and her hastily assembled security team facing off against the Pandronian boarding party led by Commander Vexara in a nearby corridor. "Stand down," Captain Chen's voice echoed through the ship's communication system, firm and unwavering despite the chaos surrounding them. Commander Vexara's reply was equally resolute. "We're here to secure the moisturizer technology. Stand aside, or we will use force." The tension in the corridor was palpable, both sides poised on the brink of conflict. Suddenly, Dr. Marcus Stevens rushed onto the scene, his lab coat flapping behind him as he wedged himself between the two groups. "Wait," he called out, breathing heavily from his sprint. "I've made a breakthrough. The moisturizer, it's not just a threat. It's creating an empathic link between our species." The doctor's words gave both sides pause. Commander Vexara's eyes narrowed, her alien features unreadable. "Explain," she demanded. As Dr. Stevens launched into a rapid-fire explanation of his findings, Jeffrey turned his attention back to Zoe. He could feel her discomfort easing, her alien physiology gradually adapting to the intense sensory input. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his hand still supporting her arm. Zoe's skin rippled with a soft blue light. "Better," she replied, her voice stronger. "But everything still feels heightened, intense." Jeffrey nodded, acutely aware of the warmth of her skin beneath his hand, the subtle vibrations of her alien biology resonating through his own body. The connection between them seemed to deepen with each passing moment, transcending the physical and entering a realm of shared consciousness he had never imagined possible. In the corridor, Commander Vexara was processing Dr. Stevens' information. "An empathic link, you say? How is this possible?" "It's the combination of the moisturizer and the earth pollen," Dr. Stevens explained eagerly. "Together, they're creating a bridge between our neural pathways. It's unprecedented." Captain Chen, seizing the opportunity to de-escalate the situation, stepped forward. "Commander, I propose a temporary ceasefire. Let's investigate this phenomenon together. It could benefit both our species." After a moment of tense silence, Commander Vexara nodded. "Agreed, but we will maintain a presence on your ship to ensure our interests are protected." As the two groups began to lower their weapons, Chief Engineer Li Wei arrived, his face streaked with sweat and soot. "Captain," he reported, "I've managed to stabilize the power systems, but the moisturizer did a number on our circuits. We're going to need some extensive repairs." "Understood, Chief," Captain Chen replied. "For now, I need you to brief Commander Vexara on the moisturizer's effects on our systems. We need full transparency if we're going to work together on this." As Li Wei began his explanation, Dr. Stevens turned to Captain Chen. "Captain, with your permission, I'd like to begin working on a treatment for the affected Pandronian crew members. I believe I can help regulate their heightened sensitivities." Captain Chen nodded her approval, and Dr. Stevens hurried back to the medical bay, already muttering calculations under his breath. In the control room, Jeffrey and Zoe were slowly regaining their equilibrium. As Zoe straightened up, no longer needing Jeffrey's support to stand, their eyes met. In that moment, a spark of understanding passed between them, deeper than words could express. "Jeffrey," Zoe said softly, her alien voice carrying a new note of warmth. "I've never experienced anything like this. It's as if I can see the world through your eyes." Jeffrey felt a rush of emotions, his own and Zoe's, intertwined in a complex tapestry of sensation and feeling. "I know," he replied, his voice equally soft. "It's incredible, and a little terrifying." Their moment was interrupted by Captain Chen's voice over the intercom. "Jeffrey, Zoe, report to the bridge immediately. We have a situation developing." As they made their way through the ship's corridors, evidence of the moisturizer's effects was everywhere. Crew members moved with careful precision, their movements exaggerated as if compensating for unexpected sensations. The air itself seemed charged with an invisible energy, tingling against their skin. When they arrived on the bridge, they found Captain Chen in deep discussion with Commander Vexara. On the main view screen, the imposing figure of Admiral Zarlith loomed large. "Ah, Jeffrey, Zoe?" Captain Chen said as they entered. "Admiral Zarlith has requested permission to come aboard for direct negotiations. Given your unique experience with the moisturizer's effects, I'd like you both to be part of our delegation." Jeffrey and Zoe exchanged glances, their newfound connection allowing them to communicate volumes without words. They both understood the weight of the responsibility being placed on their shoulders. "Of course, Captain," Jeffrey replied, straightening his posture. "We'll do whatever we can to help." As preparations for the Admiral's arrival began, Jeffrey couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The fate of human-Pandronian relations hung in the balance, and he and Zoe were now at the center of it all. Whatever came next, he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. As preparations for Admiral Zarlith's arrival began, the atmosphere on the Aquarius crackled with tension and anticipation. Jeffrey and Zoe exchanged a glance, their newfound empathic connection allowing them to silently communicate their shared apprehension and dedication. Captain Chen's voice cut through the nervous chatter on the bridge. "Jeffrey, Zoe, you're with me. We'll greet the Admiral in the docking bay." As they made their way through the corridors, the lingering effects of the moisturizer were evident. Crew members moved with exaggerated care, their heightened senses making every touch and movement feel amplified. The air itself seemed to tingle against their skin, charged with an invisible energy. The docking bay's security protocols engaged automatically as Admiral Zarlith's shuttle approached, creating a sterile environment. Jeffrey stood beside Captain Chen, his posture stiff with nervous energy. Dr. Stevens joined them, medical kit in hand, ready to address any unexpected complications. The shuttle's airlock hissed open, and Admiral Zarlith emerged, flanked by his advisors. The Pandronian leader cut an imposing figure, towering over the human delegation. His iridescent skin shimmered under the bay's harsh lights, patterns of bioluminescence rippling across its surface. Captain Chen stepped forward, her voice steady and diplomatic. "Admiral Zarlith, welcome aboard the Aquarius. I'm Captain Chen, and this is my science officer, Jeffrey, and our chief medical officer, Dr. Stevens." As the formal introductions continued, Jeffrey felt a sudden surge in his empathic abilities. The world around him seemed to blur, and he found himself awash in a sea of alien emotions. Curiosity, concern, and an undercurrent of tension flowed from the Admiral, as clear to Jeffrey as if they were his own feelings. Struggling to maintain his composure, Jeffrey leaned closer to Captain Chen. "Captain," he whispered, "I can sense the Admiral's emotions. He's genuinely curious about what happened, but there's an underlying tension. I think he's worried about potential military applications of the moisturizer." Captain Chen's eyes widened slightly, but she gave no other outward sign of surprise. She nodded almost imperceptibly, a silent acknowledgement of the tactical advantage Jeffrey's insight provided. As the group moved towards the conference room, they passed through areas still affected by the lingering mist. The effect on the Pandronian delegates was immediate and visible. Their skin flickered with intense bioluminescent patterns, and several stumbled, clearly disoriented by the sudden sensory overload. Dr. Stevens sprang into action, quickly administering a stabilizing treatment to the affected Pandronians. "This should help regulate your responses to the moisturizer," he explained, his actions demonstrating the human crew's commitment to their visitors' well-being. Admiral Zarlith watched this display with keen interest, his earlier tension seeming to ease slightly. In the conference room, Captain Chen presented a comprehensive report on the moisturizer incident. She emphasized its accidental nature and the potential benefits they had discovered. "We believe this could lead to unprecedented advancements in interspecies communication and understanding," she concluded. Admiral Zarlith listened intently, his expression unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was deep and resonant. "While your explanation is thorough, Captain, I must admit to some skepticism. The potential for this technology to be weaponized is concerning." Jeffrey, drawing on his empathic insights, stepped forward. "Admiral, if I may address your concerns about military applications?" The Admiral's eyes narrowed, but he nodded for Jeffrey to continue. I understand your worries, but I assure you, our intentions are purely peaceful. The moisturizer's effects on our neural pathways create a bridge of empathy and understanding. It has the potential to eliminate misunderstandings between our species, not exacerbate them. As Jeffrey spoke, he could sense the Admiral's skepticism giving way to intrigue. The Pandronian leader leaned forward, clearly engaged by this new perspective. Suddenly, the conference room doors slid open, and Zoe burst in, her skin pulsing with excitement. Captain Admiral, I've made a breakthrough, she announced breathlessly. We can refine the pollen moisturizer mixture to enhance its empathic properties while minimizing the intense physical reactions in Pandronians. Her unexpected entrance caused a stir among the delegates. Commander Vexara, who had been silently observing the proceedings, spoke up. How convenient that you make this discovery now. Are we to believe you haven't been withholding information about the moisturizer's full capabilities? The room tensed, the fragile diplomatic progress threatening to unravel. Jeffrey, sensing the growing mistrust, made a split-second decision. Admiral, delegates, he said, his voice cutting through the rising murmurs. I propose a demonstration. I volunteer to undergo exposure to a controlled dose of the refined compound. This will allow you to experience the empathic connection firsthand, to understand its true nature and potential. A hush fell over the room as all eyes turned to Jeffrey. Captain Chen looked at him sharply, concern evident in her eyes. Jeffrey, are you sure about this? He nodded firmly. I am, Captain. It's the best way to prove our intentions and the moisturizer's true capabilities. Captain Chen turned to Dr. Stevens. Doctor, your professional opinion? Dr. Stevens considered for a moment before responding. The refined compound should be safe for human exposure, especially in a controlled setting. I'd want to monitor Jeffrey's vitals closely, but I believe the risk is minimal. Admiral Zarlith studied Jeffrey intently, his earlier skepticism replaced by cautious interest. Very well, he said finally. We will observe this demonstration. As preparations began for the demonstration, Jeffrey caught Zoe's eye across the room. Her skin rippled with a mix of admiration and worry, their empathic connection allowing him to feel her concern as if it were his own. He gave her a reassuring smile, hoping to convey his willpower and belief that this was the right course of action. In a specially prepared chamber adjacent to the conference room, Jeffrey stood alone, his heart racing with a mix of anticipation and nervousness. As the refined pollen moisturizer mixture began to mist into the air around him, he took a deep breath, ready to bridge the gap between their species in a way never before attempted. As the mist enveloped him, Jeffrey closed his eyes, focusing on his breathing to remain calm. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then a wave of sensation washed over him, far more intense than anything he had experienced before. Colors became vibrant, sounds crystallized, and he could feel the subtle vibrations of the ship's engines through the soles of his feet. But it was the empathic connection that truly overwhelmed him. Jeffrey gasped as he suddenly felt the emotions of everyone in the room, the curiosity and apprehension of the Pandronians, Captain Chen's concern, Dr. Stevens's clinical interest, and Zoe's worry tinged with admiration. It's incredible, Jeffrey managed to say, his voice strained. I can feel everything. Everyone! His words were cut short as he stumbled, gripping the edge of a nearby console for support. Dr. Stevens rushed forward, medical scanner in hand. His neural activity is off the charts, Dr. Stevens reported, frowning at the readings. We need to get him to the medical bay immediately. As they rushed Jeffrey out of the chamber, his condition rapidly deteriorated. His eyes darted wildly, unfocused, as he muttered incoherently about voices and feelings flooding his mind. Captain Chen ordered an immediate halt to the demonstration and had Jeffrey transferred to the medical bay. In the sterile confines of the medical bay, Dr. Stevens and his team worked tirelessly to stabilize Jeffrey's rapidly mutating neural pathways. Monitors beeped urgently, displaying erratic patterns of brain activity. Zoe stood by Jeffrey's bedside, her skin pulsing with worry and concern. His empathic abilities are expanding at an exponential rate, Dr. Stevens explained to Captain Chen, who watched the proceedings with a grim expression. It's as if the refined compound has unlocked some latent potential in his brain. As they spoke, Jeffrey's body suddenly arched off the bed, his face contorted in pain. The medical equipment surrounding him sparked and flickered. "What's happening?" Captain Chen demanded. Before Dr. Stevens could respond, Chief Engineer Li Wei's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, we're detecting unusual energy fluctuations emanating from the medical bay. They're interfering with our systems, ship-wide." Captain Chen's mind raced, weighing the potential risks. "Li Wei, work on containing these energy emissions. Dr. Stevens, find a way to stabilize Jeffrey's condition. I'm implementing a ship-wide quarantine until we understand the full extent of this situation." As the quarantine protocols engaged, sealing off sections of the ship, tension grew among both the human crew and the Pandronian delegates. Admiral Zarlith, who had been observing the situation with growing concern, approached Captain Chen. "Captain, I must express my reservations about continuing this joint venture," the Admiral said, his skin flickering with patterns of unease. The risks seemed to outweigh any potential benefits. Captain Chen nodded, understanding the Admiral's position. "I assure you, Admiral, we're doing everything in our power to contain and understand the situation. I propose we wait for Dr. Stevens' full assessment before making any decisions." Back in the medical bay, Dr. Stevens made a startling observation. "Captain," he called out, "Zoe's presence seems to have a stabilizing effect on Jeffrey's condition. His neural patterns become less erratic when she's near." Zoe, who had refused to leave Jeffrey's side, looked up in surprise. Her skin rippled with a mix of hope and commitment. Dr. Stevens's mind raced with the implications. "Captain, I have a theory. Zoe's unique Pandronian biology might be acting as a stabilizing force for Jeffrey's newfound abilities. I propose a radical treatment, a bio-neural link between Jeffrey and Zoe." Captain Chen hesitated, weighing the risks. "Are you certain this is safe, Doctor?" "There are always risks with experimental procedures," Dr. Stevens admitted. "But given Jeffrey's deteriorating condition, I believe this is our best option." After a moment of consideration, Captain Chen nodded. "Proceed, Doctor. But monitor them closely." As Dr. Stevens began preparing for the procedure, Li Wei's voice came over the intercom again. "Captain, I've managed to create a containment field around the medical bay. It's holding for now, but these energy fluctuations are unlike anything I've seen before." With the containment field in place, Dr. Stevens initiated the bio-neural link between Jeffrey and Zoe. As the connection formed, Jeffrey's body suddenly went rigid, his eyes flying open. A wave of energy pulsed outward, momentarily overwhelming Li Wei's containment field. For a brief, staggering moment, every mind on both the Aquarius and the Pandronian vessel was connected. Humans and Pandronians alike gasped as they experienced a flood of alien thoughts and emotions. The empathic burst lasted only seconds, but its impact was profound. As the wave subsided, Jeffrey's condition began to stabilize. His erratic movements ceased, and his breathing evened out. Zoe, still connected to him through the bio-neural link, smiled in relief. "It's working," Dr. Stevens announced, checking the monitors. "His neural pathways are stabilizing." Jeffrey's eyes fluttered open, focusing on Zoe. When he spoke, his voice was weak but clear. "I can feel you," he said softly. "All of you. It's like a network, connecting all Pandronians." Zoe's skin rippled with surprise and awe. "A network? But that's impossible. We've never—" "It's there," Jeffrey insisted. "Latent, hidden, but I can feel it." As the implications of this discovery began to sink in, the ship's long-range sensors blared an alert. Captain Chen rushed to the bridge, leaving Dr. Stevens to monitor Jeffrey and Zoe. On the main view screen, a sleek, unfamiliar vessel appeared, rapidly approaching the Aquarius. "Captain," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving a hail. It's the Galactic Council. They're requesting permission to board and investigate the unusual energy readings they've detected." Captain Chen straightened her uniform, acutely aware that the next few moments could shape the future of human-Pandronian relations and their place in the galactic community. "Open a channel," she ordered, preparing to navigate this new challenge with the same purpose that had brought them this far. As the Galactic Council ship drew closer, Jeffrey and Zoe's bioneural link continued to strengthen, their shared experiences opening new avenues of understanding between their species. Meanwhile, in engineering, Li Wei worked feverishly to maintain the containment field, knowing that the stability of the ship, and perhaps the future of interspecies relations, depended on his efforts. The future of their mission, and perhaps interstellar diplomacy itself, hung in the balance. As Captain Chen prepared to respond to the Galactic Council's hail, a sudden commotion erupted from the medical bay. Alarms blared, and Dr. Stevens' urgent voice came over the intercom. "Captain, we have a situation. Jeffrey's empathic abilities are expanding at an unprecedented rate. He's connecting with the ship's hydroponic gardens." Chen's eyes widened. "What do you mean, connecting?" Before Dr. Stevens could respond, Chief Engineer Li Wei's voice cut in. "Captain, we're detecting rapid growth in the hydroponic section. The plants they're growing out of control." Chen sprinted to the nearest viewport, her heart racing. Through the transparent aluminum, she saw tendrils of green snaking along the corridor walls, leaves unfurling at an impossible speed. The ship's normally sterile interior was transforming into a verdant jungle before her eyes. "All hands, this is the captain," Chen announced over the ship-wide comm. "We have a botanical emergency. I need containment teams to hydroponics immediately. Li Wei, lead the response." As crew members scrambled to respond, Chen turned to her first officer. "Contact Dr. Voss on the Galactic Council ship. We need her expertise." In the medical bay, Jeffrey writhed on the bed, his eyes rolled back in his head. Zoe stood nearby, her skin pulsing with a mixture of fear and concern. Dr. Stevens worked feverishly at the monitoring equipment, trying to make sense of the readings. "His neural activity is off the charts," Stevens muttered. "It's as if he's connected to every plant on the ship simultaneously." Zoe reached out, placing a hand on Jeffrey's arm. The moment their skin made contact, Jeffrey's thrashing subsided slightly. Dr. Stevens noticed the change immediately. "Fascinating," he said. "Your touch seems to have a stabilizing effect." Meanwhile, Li Wei and his team had reached the hydroponics bay. They stood at the entrance, staring in disbelief at the scene before them. The once orderly rows of plants had erupted into a chaotic mass of vines, leaves, and roots. Tendrils snaked around equipment, threatening to crush delicate machinery. "Break out the cutting tools," Li Wei ordered. "We need to contain this growth before it reaches critical systems." The team moved in, plasma cutters humming to life. But as they began to slice through the overgrown vegetation, they made a startling discovery. "Sir," one of the engineers called out, "the plants, they're regenerating faster than we can cut them." Li Wei frowned, watching as a severed vine regrew in seconds. "This is beyond anything we've encountered. We need a new approach." Back on the bridge, Captain Chen received a hail from the approaching Galactic Council ship. The face of Dr. Ilara Voss, a stern-looking woman with piercing green eyes, appeared on the interface. "Captain Chen," Dr. Voss said, her voice crisp and authoritative, "we've detected unusual energy signatures from your vessel. We're prepared to offer assistance." Chen nodded gratefully. "Doctor, we have a situation involving rapidly growing plants and an empathically enhanced human. Any insights would be appreciated." Dr. Voss's eyes narrowed with interest. "An empathically enhanced human? Fascinating. I have a theory, but I'll need to come aboard to confirm it." As arrangements were made for Dr. Voss to board the Aquarius, another alert blared on the bridge. The tactical officer's voice was tense as he reported, "Captain, we're detecting an unidentified vessel approaching at high speed. Energy signature matches known profiles of biopirates." Chen's blood ran cold. She knew of the genetic harvesters, infamous for their ruthless pursuit of unique biological specimens. With Jeffrey's condition and the rapidly mutating plants, the Aquarius had become a tempting target. "Red alert," Chen ordered. "Shields up, helm, evasive maneuvers." As the Aquarius began to move, the ship lurched unnaturally. Li Wei's voice came over the comm, tinged with panic. "Captain, the plant growth has reached the engine room. It's interfering with our propulsion systems." Chen gritted her teeth, realizing the gravity of their situation. Trapped between an advancing Galactic Council ship, marauding biopirates, and their own ship betraying them, she knew the next few moments would be critical. In the medical bay, Dr. Stevens and Zoe watched as Jeffrey's eyes suddenly snapped open. His gaze was unfocused, seeing something beyond the confines of the ship. "The plants," he whispered, his voice filled with wonder and terror. "I can feel them all. They're trying to protect us." As Jeffrey spoke, the ship trembled again. But this time, it wasn't from the plants interfering with the systems. Through the viewport, Chen watched in amazement as vines burst from the hull, reaching out into space like organic tentacles. The battle for control of the Aquarius, and perhaps the future of human-Pandronian relations, had entered a new, unprecedented phase. With threats closing in from all sides and their own ship transforming around them, the crew faced a challenge unlike any they had encountered before. The organic tendrils bursting from the Aquarius's hull lashed out, ensnaring the approaching biopirate vessel. Captain Chen watched in awe as the vines tightened their grip, immobilizing the threat. "Incredible," she breathed, turning to her tactical officer. "Status report on the biopirate ship?" "Their engines are offline, Captain. The vines have completely entangled their propulsion systems." Chen nodded, a mix of relief and concern washing over her. The immediate danger had passed, but the implications of Jeffrey's newfound abilities were staggering. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving another hail from the Galactic Council ship. Dr. Voss is requesting permission to come aboard immediately." "Granted," Chen replied. "Direct her to the medical bay and get me a status update on our engines." As Chen made her way to the medical bay, she passed through corridors transformed into lush gardens. Crew members worked feverishly to clear paths through the vegetation, their faces a mix of wonder and worry. In the medical bay, Dr. Stevens and Zoe hovered over Jeffrey, who lay still on the biobed, his eyes closed but moving rapidly beneath his lids. Zoe's skin rippled with a kaleidoscope of colors, her hand resting gently on Jeffrey's arm. Dr. Voss entered, her piercing green eyes taking in the scene with clinical interest. "Fascinating," she murmured, approaching the biobed. "I've never seen anything quite like this." Chen stepped forward. "Dr. Voss, thank you for coming. As you can see, we have a rather unique situation on our hands." Voss nodded, her gaze fixed on Jeffrey and Zoe. "Indeed, I believe we're witnessing the emergence of a new form of empathic ability, one that bridges the gap between human and Pandronian physiology." As if on cue, Jeffrey's eyes fluttered open. He looked around, disoriented for a moment before focusing on Zoe. "The plants," he whispered. "They listened. They protected us." Dr. Voss leaned in, her voice gentle but probing. "Jeffrey, can you describe what you experienced?" Jeffrey struggled to find the words. "It was like I could feel every leaf, every root. They were an extension of myself, of all of us." Chen interjected, "Doctor, while this is undoubtedly groundbreaking, we need to address the immediate concerns. Our ship is overrun with vegetation, and we have an incapacitated biopirate vessel to deal with." Voss straightened, her demeanor shifting from fascinated researcher to decisive problem solver. "Of course, Captain. I propose we move Jeffrey and Zoe to the Galactic Council station. We have facilities better equipped to study and contain their abilities." Chen hesitated, weighing the risks and benefits. "And what about my ship and crew?" "The station has advanced botanical containment systems," Voss explained. "We can assist in safely removing the excess vegetation without harming your vessel's systems." Before Chen could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Li Wei's voice came over the intercom, tinged with urgency. "Captain, the biopirate ship is showing signs of power restoration. They're attempting to break free from the vines." Chen's eyes narrowed. "Doctor, we'll take you up on that offer. Prepare to receive Jeffrey and Zoe on your ship. We'll follow as soon as we've dealt with our uninvited guests." As Chen rushed back to the bridge, Dr. Voss began preparations to transfer Jeffrey and Zoe. The medical bay buzzed with activity as equipment was secured for transport. On the bridge, Chen found her crew working furiously to maintain control of the situation. The view screen showed the biopirate ship writhing against its organic bonds, arcs of energy pulsing along its hull as it attempted to break free. "Target their power systems," Chen ordered. "Disable them before they can escape." The tactical officer's fingers flew over the console, but before he could fire, the bio-pirate ship suddenly went dark. The vines holding it seemed to pulse with an eerie green light. "Captain," the science officer reported, "I'm detecting a massive energy drain from the bio-pirate vessel. It's as if the plants are absorbing their power." Chen watched, transfixed, as the vines began to retract, pulling the now powerless bio-pirate ship closer to the Aquarius. "Contact Dr. Voss," she said. "Tell her we're going to need a containment unit for some unexpected guests." As the Aquarius maneuvered to dock with the Galactic Council ship, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of something monumental. The merger of human ingenuity, Pandronian biology, and this new, unprecedented empathic ability had the potential to reshape their understanding of the universe. With Jeffrey and Zoe safely transferred to the Council ship and the bio-pirate crew in custody, the Aquarius was towed into one of the station's massive docking bays. Teams of specialists in environmental suits swarmed the ship, working to contain and study the empathically enhanced plant life. In a secure laboratory deep within the station, Dr. Voss began a series of carefully controlled experiments to understand the full extent of Jeffrey's abilities and their connection to Zoe's Pandronian physiology. Captain Chen, along with Admiral Zarlith, observed from behind a reinforced observation window. "Initiating empathic field measurement," Dr. Voss announced, her voice calm and clinical. Jeffrey sat in the center of the lab, electrodes attached to his temples. Zoe stood nearby, her skin shimmering with anticipation. As the machines hummed to life, Jeffrey closed his eyes, his brow furrowing in concentration. Suddenly, the potted plants scattered around the lab began to quiver. Leaves unfurled at an impossible speed, stems elongating visibly. Dr. Voss's eyes widened as she watched her carefully calibrated sensors spike off the charts. "Remarkable," she breathed. "The empathic field is extending beyond the confines of the lab. It's interacting with the station's hydroponics system." Before anyone could react, alarms began to blare throughout the station. Commander Kira Volkov's voice crackled over the intercom, tense and urgent. "All personnel, we have a code green in hydroponics sectors A through E. Implementing emergency containment protocols now." Chen and Zarlith exchanged worried glances. The incredible discovery was quickly spiraling into a potential disaster. As Volkov's teams rushed to contain the rapidly expanding vegetation, Dr. Voss worked feverishly to understand and control Jeffrey's burgeoning abilities. The fate of the station, and perhaps the future of human Pandronian relations, hung in the balance, dependent on their ability to harness this new and volatile power. Force. The situation was rapidly evolving beyond their control. Suddenly, Jeffrey gasped, his body tensing on the biobed. Zoe's skin flashed a brilliant array of colors, her eyes widening in surprise. Dr. Voss rushed to check their vital signs, but before she could reach them, a wave of energy pulsed through the lab. Chen stumbled, catching herself on a nearby console. She blinked, disoriented, as a flood of emotions washed over her. Fear, confusion, wonder, feelings that weren't entirely her own. She looked up to see Admiral Zarlith and Dr. Voss wearing similar expressions of bewilderment. "What's happening?" Chen managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Voss shook her head, struggling to focus. "It appears Jeffrey and Zoe's empathic link has expanded. Somehow it's interfacing with the station's systems and us." As if to confirm her theory, the station-wide intercom crackled to life. Commander Kira Volkov's voice, usually stern and controlled, wavered with an uncharacteristic mix of awe and concern. "All personnel were experiencing an unprecedented empathic phenomenon. Remain calm and stay at your posts." Chen forced herself to concentrate, pushing through the swirl of foreign emotions. She tapped her comm badge. "Bridge. Status report." "Captain," her first officer responded, his voice tight with effort. "The empathic field has spread throughout the station. We're receiving reports of shared consciousness from all decks." Chen turned to Admiral Zarlith, seeing her own shock mirrored in his alien features. "We need to contain this," she said, her tactical mind already racing ahead. Zarlith nodded, his normally inscrutable expression open and vulnerable. Agreed, but perhaps we can use this connection to our advantage. As if on cue, Chief Engineer Li Wei's voice came over the comm. Captain, I think I have an idea. If we can harness this empathic field, we might be able to stabilize the station's systems. Do it, Chen ordered, feeling a surge of hope that she knew wasn't entirely her own. In the following minutes, an impromptu task force formed, transcending species and rank. Humans, Pandronians, and Galactic Council members worked in unprecedented harmony, their shared empathic experience breaking down barriers of mistrust and miscommunication. Li Wei, his movements swift and sure, directed a team to modify the station's atmospheric controls. Dr. Voss, her scientific curiosity overriding her initial shock, began correlating data on the empathic field's interaction with the station's neural interfaces. As the task force made progress, Chen felt the chaotic swirl of emotions begin to settle. The shared empathic field was stabilizing, allowing for clearer thoughts and more focused action. However, the moment of unity was shattered by a piercing alarm. Commander Volkov's voice, now back to its usual sharpness, cut through the relative calm. Security alert. We have unauthorized access attempts in multiple sectors. It's the genetic harvesters. Chen's blood ran cold. In the midst of the empathic crisis, she had almost forgotten about the biopirates. She turned to Admiral Zarlith, seeing her own grit reflected in his eyes. We need to secure Jeffrey and Zoe, Chen said, already moving towards the biobed where the two lay, still locked in their empathic trance. Before she could reach them, Dr. Stevens stepped forward, his face grave. Captain, we have another problem. Their neural patterns are becoming dangerously erratic. If we don't separate them soon, they could suffer permanent damage. Chen felt the weight of command settle heavily on her shoulders. The station was in chaos, the genetic harvesters were on the move, and now the very people at the center of this crisis were in medical danger. She tapped her comm badge. Bridge, prepare the Aquarius for emergency departure. We're transferring Jeffrey and Zoe to the ship. As her crew acknowledged the order, Chen turned to face the others in the lab. The shared empathic field allowed her to sense their mix of concern, persistence, and, in some cases, fear. Listen up, she said, her voice cutting through the tension. We have multiple crises converging. Our priority is to protect Jeffrey and Zoe while stabilizing the station. Dr. Voss, continue your work on understanding and controlling the empathic field. Li Wei, focus on regaining control of the station's systems. Admiral Zarlith, I need your help to coordinate defense against the genetic harvesters. As the team sprang into action, Chen moved to oversee the transfer of Jeffrey and Zoe. The empathic field pulsed around them, a tangible reminder of the unprecedented situation they faced. Just as they were about to move the patients, a new sensation washed over Chen. A sweet, almost floral scent filled the air, and she felt her awareness expand even further. Glancing around, she saw others reacting similarly, their expressions shifting from confusion to wonder. Dr. Voss, who had been monitoring her instruments, looked up with wide eyes. Captain, the station's hydroponic system is producing some kind of pollen. It's interacting with the empathic field, enhancing its effects. Chen nodded, feeling the change herself. The chaotic mix of emotions was clarifying, allowing for a deeper level of understanding and communication. She could sense Jeffrey and Zoe more clearly now, their presence like beacons in the empathic field. Using this enhanced connection, Chen focused her thoughts towards them. Jeffrey, Zoe, if you can hear me, we need your help. The station is in danger. We need to transfer you to the Aquarius. To her amazement, she felt a response, not in words, but in feelings and abstract concepts. Understanding, agreement, and a gradually lessening grip on the station's systems. As Jeffrey and Zoe began to relinquish control, Chen felt the station's AI reasserting itself. Systems that had been erratic started to stabilize, and the overwhelming sense of chaos began to subside. But even as hope began to rise, a new threat loomed. Through the enhanced empathic field, Chen sensed a group of minds approaching, focused, determined, and with intentions that sent a chill down her spine. Security to Docking Bay 3, she ordered, her voice tight. The genetic harvesters are making their move. As her security teams rushed to respond, Chen steeled herself for the confrontation ahead. The fate of Jeffrey, Zoe, and perhaps the future of human-Pandronian relations hung in the balance. With the empathically enhanced pollen swirling through the air and the station's systems still in flux, she knew the coming battle would be unlike any they had faced before. As Chen braced herself for the impending clash, a sudden wave of sensation washed over her, more powerful than anything she had experienced yet. The air in the station seemed to vibrate with energy, and Chen felt her consciousness expanding rapidly. In an instant, she was aware of every mind on the station, human, Pandronian, and even the genetic harvesters. The empathic field had reached a critical mass, engulfing everyone in its embrace. Time seemed to slow as the shared consciousness took hold. Chen could sense the fear and grit of her security teams, the curiosity and concern of the scientists, and the ruthless focus of the genetic harvesters. But most prominently, she felt the overwhelming presence of Jeffrey and Zoe at the center of it all, their minds intertwined in a complex dance of human and Pandronian thought. In that moment of profound connection, understanding flowed between all parties. The genetic harvester's desperation, the scientist's passion for discovery, and the security team's protective instincts all mingled in a tapestry of shared experience. Even Zara Vex, the leader of the harvesters, found her single-minded pursuit momentarily derailed by the flood of empathy. Seizing the opportunity presented by this unexpected ceasefire, Chen fought through the disorientation and activated her comm badge. "Li Wei," she managed, her voice strained with effort. "We need a portable empathic dampening field. Now." The chief engineer's response came not through the comm system, but directly into Chen's mind. Understanding and agreement flowed between them, and Chen knew Li Wei was already on the move, his brilliant mind racing to solve the problem. As the empathic effect began to ebb, Chen saw Commander Volkov spring into action. The security chief's movements were precise and efficient as she directed her teams to deploy canisters of fast-acting sedative gas. The genetic harvesters, still reeling from the empathic surge, were caught off guard. One by one, they succumbed to the gas, slumping to the floor. Chen's relief was short-lived as she spotted a flash of movement. Zara Vex, her face a mask of fury and frustration, ducked into a maintenance corridor. "Volkov!" Chen called out, pointing towards the retreating figure. The commander nodded grimly and set off in pursuit with a small team. Meanwhile, in the lab, Dr. Voss worked feverishly at her console, her fingers flying over the controls. "Captain," she called out, excitement evident in her voice, "I think we've found a way to stabilize the station's systems. The empathically enhanced plants, they're not just interfacing with our technology, they're forming a symbiotic relationship with it." Before Chen could respond, Li Wei burst into the lab, carrying a hastily assembled device. "The portable dampening field," he announced, his face flushed with exertion and pride. "It should allow us to move Jeffrey and Zoe without disrupting their connection or the station's systems." Chen nodded approvingly. "Let's get them to the Aquarius. Dr. Stevens, prepare for immediate transfer." As the team carefully maneuvered Jeffrey and Zoe onto gurneys, Chen felt a presence at her side. Admiral Zarlith stood there, his alien features set in an expression of deep contemplation. "Captain," he said, his voice low, "I've just spoken with the Pandronian government. I've convinced them to delay the evacuation order. This situation, it's too important to abandon." Chen felt a surge of relief and gratitude. "Thank you, Admiral. Your support could make all the difference." As they moved through the corridors towards the Aquarius, Chen could sense the gradual shift in the station's atmosphere. The chaos was subsiding, replaced by a focused dedication. In the wake of the shared empathic experience, humans and Pandronians worked side by side with newfound understanding and efficiency. Aboard the Aquarius, Dr. Stevens immediately began the delicate process of separating Jeffrey and Zoe's neural connection. Chen watched anxiously as the doctor worked, his brow furrowed in concentration. Suddenly, Jeffrey's eyes fluttered open, followed moments later by Zoe's. Their gazes met, and Chen saw a flash of recognition pass between them, a recognition that went beyond their previous relationship. "Captain," Jeffrey said, his voice hoarse, we remember everything. each other's memories, experiences. Zoe's skin rippled with a kaleidoscope of colors. "It's extraordinary," she added, her voice filled with wonder. "We understand each other in a way I never thought possible." As Chen absorbed the implications of this development, her comm badge chirped. "Captain," came Li Wei's voice, "we've successfully integrated the empathically enhanced plants into the station's life support and power systems. We're seeing a 200% increase in efficiency across the board." Chen allowed herself a small smile. Progress was being made, but she knew they were far from out of the woods. The escaped Zara Vex posed an ongoing threat, and the political ramifications of the day's events were only beginning to unfold. Looking at Jeffrey and Zoe, their hands intertwined as they marveled at their shared consciousness, Chen made a decision. "Bridge," she said, tapping her comm badge. "Contact Earth and the Galactic Council. It's time we discuss the establishment of a permanent joint research facility here." As the Aquarius hummed with activity, Chen gazed out at the vast expanse of space beyond the viewports. The events of the past few hours had opened up possibilities she had never imagined. The future, with all its challenges and opportunities, stretched out before them like the star-studded void. Expanse like the star-studded void itself. As the Aquarius hummed with activity, the recovery of Jeffrey and Zoe progressed at an astonishing rate. The unique blending of their memories and experiences had created something entirely new, a bridge between human and Pandronian understanding that defied conventional explanation. Dr. Stevens, his eyes glued to the neural activity readouts, let out a low whistle. "Captain," he called, his voice tinged with excitement. "You need to see this." Chen moved swiftly to his side, her gaze scanning the complex patterns dancing across the screen. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" It's unprecedented," Stevens replied, his fingers flying over the controls. "Their empathic link has evolved into a form of communication that goes beyond anything we've seen before. It's not just thoughts or emotions, it's entire concepts, shared instantaneously." Chen's mind raced with the implications. "Can we replicate it?" "Not yet," Stevens admitted. "But with further study," Chen nodded, decision made. "Assemble a specialized research team. I want Dr. Voss and Dr. Zant leading the effort. Their goal, develop technology to harness and replicate this empathic link." As the research team began their work, Chen's attention was drawn to an incoming transmission from the station. Li Wei's face appeared on the screen, his expression a mix of exhaustion and triumph. "Captain," he reported, "we've successfully integrated the empathically enhanced plants into the station's life support systems. You won't believe the results. Air quality has improved by 47%, and overall environmental stability is up by 62%. Chen allowed herself a small smile. "Excellent work, Li Wei. How are the other species representatives reacting?" "They're intrigued, to say the least," Li Wei replied. "We've had inquiries from the Rigelian and Tau Ceti delegations about potential applications for their own habitats." As Chen contemplated the diplomatic opportunities this presented, her comm badge chirped. "Captain," came Admiral Zarlith's voice, "I've secured temporary approval from my government. We're initiating a cultural exchange program. A select group of human scientists and diplomats will visit the Pandronian homeworld, while a delegation of our officials prepares to tour Earth." Chen's pulse quickened. This was a monumental step forward in human Pandronian relations. "Understood, Admiral. We'll begin preparations immediately." As the Aquarius buzzed with the news of the exchange program, Security Officer Elena Rodriguez felt a sudden unease. Her hand unconsciously moved to her sidearm as she scanned the docking bay. Something felt off. Her instincts, heightened by the lingering effects of the empathic pollen, screamed danger. Without hesitation, she tapped her comm badge. "Security team to docking bay for immediate sweep. Authorization, Rodriguez Alpha 37. As her team moved into position, a shadow detached itself from behind a cargo container. Zara Vex, her face twisted in frustration, slipped away through a maintenance hatch. Her plan to infiltrate the ship and sabotage its systems had been thwarted, but she was far from defeated. Back on the station, Commander Volkov received an urgent communication from her superiors. Her face grew grim as she absorbed the intelligence report. News of the empathic technology had spread further than anticipated, catching the attention of potentially hostile alien factions. Volkov's fingers flew over her console, implementing enhanced security protocols. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were now in a race against time. In the Aquarius's medical bay, Jeffrey and Zoe sat side by side, their hands intertwined. Dr. Stevens stood before them, his expression serious. "Your neural patterns have stabilized," he explained. "We can attempt a full separation of your empathic link." Jeffrey and Zoe exchanged a glance, a world of understanding passing between them in an instant. "And if we don't want to separate?" Jeffrey asked quietly. Dr. Stevens hesitated. "The long-term effects of maintaining the link are unknown. There could be risks, but also opportunities," Zoe added, her skin rippling with shades of blue and green. Before Dr. Stevens could respond, Captain Chen entered the room. She took in the scene before her, understanding immediately the weight of the decision facing Jeffrey and Zoe. "I think," she said carefully, "this is a conversation we need to have in private." As Chen led Jeffrey and Zoe to her ready room, alarms blared in the research lab. Dr. Voss and Dr. Zant stared in astonishment at the readings from the empathically enhanced plants. "This can't be right," Dr. Zant muttered, recalibrating the sensors. But the data remained unchanged. The plants, exposed to prolonged empathic fields, were showing signs of sentience. As the implications of this discovery began to sink in, a new complication arrived in the form of Dr. Xanthi Quaros, representative of the Galactic Council's Ethics Committee. Her piercing gaze took in the lab, lingering on the gently swaying plants. "I believe," she said, her voice cool and precise, "we have much to discuss." Meanwhile, in a shadowy corner of the station's lower levels, Zaravex made contact with a disgruntled Pandronian engineer. Credits exchanged hands, followed by a data chip containing classified information on Pandronian biology and the latest empathic research findings. Zara's eyes glittered with triumph as she pocketed the chip. Her setback in the docking bay was already forgotten. She had what she needed now to move forward with her plans. As these events unfolded, the Aquarius and the station hung in the void, their futures intertwined in ways no one could have predicted. The empathic link between Jeffrey and Zoe, the cultural exchange program, the sentient plants, and the looming threats, both known and unknown. All these threads were drawing together, weaving a tapestry of possibilities that would shape the future of interstellar relations. Captain Chen, standing at the viewport in her ready room, gazed out at the star-filled expanse. She could feel the weight of the decisions that lay ahead, decisions that would impact not just her crew, but potentially the entire galaxy. With a deep breath, she turned to face Jeffrey and Zoe, ready to begin a conversation that could change everything. Everything. The future, with all its challenges and opportunities, stretched out before them like the star-studded void. As Captain Chen turned away from the viewport, the ship's alarm system blared to life. Red emergency lights bathed the ready room in an ominous glow. "Captain, to the bridge," came the urgent voice of her first officer through the comm system. Chen sprinted out of her ready room, her mind racing through potential scenarios. As she entered the bridge, the view screen displayed a chaotic scene unfolding on the Galactic Council station. "Report!" she barked, settling into her command chair. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Kira, responded swiftly. "Multiple security breaches detected on the station, Captain. We're also picking up unauthorized access attempts on our own systems." Before Chen could respond, another alarm sounded. "Intruder alert," the ship's computer announced. "Unknown entities detected in sectors 3 through 7. Chen's eyes narrowed. "Initiate ship-wide lockdown. Security teams to all compromised areas." As the crew sprang into action, Chen's comm badge chirped. "Captain," came Dr. Stevens' voice, tinged with urgency, "we need to move Jeffrey and Zoe to a secure location immediately." "Understood, Doctor. Take them to Medical Bay 2. It's our most defensible position." Chen turned to her communications officer. "Get me Commander Volkov on the station." The view screen flickered, revealing Volkov's grim face. "Captain, we have a situation here. The empathically enhanced plants are growing at an exponential rate. They're interfacing with our systems, causing widespread malfunctions." Chen's mind raced, connecting the dots. The plants, the security breaches, This is coordinated. Commander, contain the plant growth as best you can. We'll handle the intruders." As Volkov nodded and the connection cut off, Security Officer Elena Rodriguez's voice came through the comm system. "Captain, we've engaged hostile forces in the main corridor. They're using some kind of advanced cloaking technology." Chen's fist clenched. "Zara Vex," she muttered. "Rodriguez, use the residual empathic effects to your advantage. Trust your instincts." In the corridors of the Aquarius, Elena led her team through a tense cat-and-mouse game with the nearly invisible intruders. The faint shimmer of a cloaking field caught her eye, and she fired her phaser with deadly accuracy. A genetic harvester materialized as he fell, his cloaking device shorting out. Elena's team moved forward, their enhanced intuition allowing them to anticipate the enemy's movements. Meanwhile, in Medical Bay 2, Dr. Stevens worked feverishly to stabilize Jeffrey and Zoe's vital signs. The two exchanged a long look, an entire conversation passing between them in silence. "Doctor," Jeffrey said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them, "we need to re-establish our full empathic link." Dr. Stevens hesitated. "The risks are necessary," Zoe finished, her skin pulsing with tenacity. As Stevens reluctantly began the procedure, Zara Vex and her remaining team members fought their way closer to the medical bay. Their cloaking technology gave them an edge, but the Aquarius crew's enhanced intuition was proving to be a formidable defense. Zara's face twisted in frustration as another of her team fell to a well-placed phaser shot. She tapped a command into her wrist device, initiating a more aggressive attack protocol. Back on the bridge, Captain Chen coordinated the defense of both her ship and the station. "Divert auxiliary power to the shields," she ordered, "and get me a direct link to Medical Bay 2. As the connection established, Chen watched in awe as Jeffrey and Zoe's empathic link flared to life. The Medical Bay's sensors lit up like a supernova, energy readings skyrocketing off the charts. Through their shared consciousness, Jeffrey and Zoe reached out, their awareness expanding beyond the confines of the ship. They touched the minds of the sentient plants on the station, feeling their confusion and fear. "They're scared," Jeffrey's voice came through the comm, sounding distant and otherworldly. "They don't understand their own existence." Zoe's voice joined his, creating an eerie harmony. "We can guide them, show them a way to coexist with the station's systems." As Jeffrey and Zoe communicated with the plants, their empathic field continued to expand. It washed over the Aquarius in a wave of emotion and shared experience. In the corridors, Elena Rodriguez felt the wave hit her. Suddenly, she could sense the exact positions of the cloaked intruders. Her team moved with newfound precision, quickly neutralizing the remaining threats. The empathic field reached Zara Vex just as she breached the outer defenses of the medical bay. She staggered, overwhelmed by the sudden influx of emotions and memories. Images flashed through her mind. Jeffrey's curiosity, Zoe's wonder at human culture, the shared experiences of the crew. Zara's hand, poised to enter the final override code on the medical bay door, trembled and fell to her side. The weight of the connection, the depth of understanding it offered, shook her to her core. In that moment, Zara saw the true potential of the empathic technology, not as a weapon or a tool for exploitation, but as a bridge between species, a means to foster genuine understanding. Her fingers, moving almost of their own accord, keyed in a different sequence on her wrist device. Her cloaking field fell away, revealing her position to the security team closing in. "I surrender," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. As security personnel surrounded her, Zara looked up at the nearest comm panel. "Captain Chen," she called out, her voice stronger now. "I have information you need to hear." On the bridge, Chen's eyebrows rose in surprise. She exchanged a glance with her first officer before responding. "I'm listening, Ms. Vex. The black market operations targeting your research. I can help you shut them down. In exchange, I want to be part of this. Whatever it is you're creating here, I want to help build it." Chen's mind raced, weighing the potential risks and benefits. Before she could respond, another alarm sounded. "Captain," her science officer reported, "we're detecting a massive surge of energy from the station. The plant network is evolving." Chen's gaze snapped back to the view screen, watching as the Galactic Council station transformed before her eyes. The once sterile corridors now pulsed with organic life, seamlessly integrated with the station's technology. Through it all, Jeffrey and Zoe's voices continued to echo through the comm system, guiding the evolution of both the plants and the empathic field connecting everyone. As the chaos of the multiple crises began to subside, Chen realized they stood on the precipice of something truly revolutionary. The decisions made in the next few hours would shape the future of interstellar relations for generations to come. With a deep breath, Chen opened a channel to Admiral Zarlith. "Admiral," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment, "I think it's time we convened an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The universe as we know it is about to change."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.